Well, we have officially reached the halfway point for the year 2024. At the end of today, it'll be, the calendar will turn, it'll be July 1, and we're in the back half of 2024. You know, last week we did our annual mid-year conference call for our clients, and obviously that was informative, or at least we thought so, giving some perspective on a world that seems to be at odds with what the perception is versus what the reality is. We've certainly kind of been talking about that at length over the course of the past few shows here on Dollars and Cents. And so also this week, it was the first presidential debate. So all kinds of stuff going on in the last week of the first half of the year. We are joined this week on the program by fellow certified financial fiduciary Chet Cowart. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here, ready to do this.
And hopefully you and I will be able to do this show with a little less fireworks than what occurred on Thursday at the presidential debate. Hopefully we're going to be able to be adults and engage in a conversation that is designed to help you make good decisions.
Absolutely. I think we can. I would hope we're able to behave a little bit better than they are on that stuff.
Man, oh man, holy mackerel! And I guess that kind of gets to one of the things that we talked about in that mid-year conference call with our clients last week, is because the timing of that first presidential debate really kind of, and obviously it's going to become front and center, right, for now, between now and November, where you're going to have a lot of these conversations about who's going to win, what's the impact, all of that. That's for sure.
Right, yeah, there's always that notion that the market is going to do better or worse depending on which political party is in power, who wins the presidential election. And the reality is businesses will make money no matter what. The world will go on, and data does not show that the market consistently performs better, with one party versus the other.
No real distinction one way or the other. I think at the end of the day, as long as you have some form of gridlock, and I suspect that we will certainly wind up with that, then nothing really swings too dramatically one way or the other. The reality is, and to your point, Chet, businesses are still going to make money, whether there's a D in the White House or an R in the White House. And I think, though, that's not to say that maybe it's a different company that might do better under Biden, or a different company that might do better under Trump. And I think that really underscores the value of active management, to sort of be able to go where the opportunities are versus some of the sort of the passive investing that happens a lot out there, where you're just sort of blindly following an index, if you will.
Absolutely, yeah. The active management, the people at the fund companies every day are choosing, on any given time which company is in which fund versus which one's leaving, and that's what you want. No matter who's in office, it's going to help a lot versus just tracking an index and follow wherever the market goes.
Yeah, I know we've had some conversations with portfolio managers. Just thinking back over the past 2 or 3 years, there was a lot of bills that passed, and we've talked about them before on the radio program. There was the CHIPS Act, and then there was the Infrastructure Act, and there was a lot of dollars that were getting spent with companies that sort of make the stuff that becomes the backbone of how you do that, how you build that stuff. And so a lot of some of the conversations we had about some of the portfolio managers and some of the key decisions that they had made inside portfolios relate sort of to that. So to your point, Chet, businesses make money no matter whether there's a D and an R. Is it going to be different? Sure, but that's the value of active management.
Absolutely. I mean, no one's going to truly know, and having those funds or the companies within the funds move around, buy and sell all the time, you'll always be, ready and positioned for the opportunity that comes.
The real disappointing part, and I think this is the real issue, and one of the things that I always ask, as you know, Chet, whenever we're kind of hosting these conversations with portfolio managers or equity strategists, like we do with our normal sort of quarterly events that are in person and feature dinner and all of that, and so on the call this past week, I always like to end it with the conversation of what keeps you awake at night, what makes you fall asleep, and man, I just think we're missing kind of the real issue that's going to have the biggest impact over the course of the next 2 or 3 decades.
Right. Yeah. Our country's debt is going to match GDP this year, and history will typically frown upon this, and the debt just keeps going higher and higher and higher with no there's no sense that it's going to stop anytime soon, it seems.
Well, and that's a good reference to history, Chet, because when you look at, and there was a great article in the Wall Street Journal here a couple weeks ago that kind of got into all of that, and you look at all the previous sort of quote unquote empires, if you will, whether it's the Romans or the British, and one of the things that where it starts to kind of fall is when you start to have more debt than what your economy can produce. And so it's disappointing that nobody really, it's funny, we mentioned this in the call, usually the party out of power, at least there'll be somebody that will step forward and say, and be a little bit more of a fiscal hawk, say, hey, we got to get this under control. And unfortunately, neither side is really talking about that right now.
Yeah, and I mean, in fact, both parties are adding almost an equal amount of debt every term. So it seems that at this point, nobody is really even concerned about tackling the problem. Both parties just want to add to it, and I think we've sort of gotten to a point where this country's debt has just become so normal, and there almost is not a way out. At least that's how I imagine they see it. That it's just kicking the ball down the street farther.
Yeah, but that's never a good thing. And you're right, though. I mean, you look at the stats. During the Trump administration, $7 trillion got added to the debt. During the Biden administration, $7 trillion got added to the debt. I mean, that's a little bit of a problem. That is for sure. In other news, I guess another week, another little recognition for Nelson Financial Planning. Last week on the program, we mentioned that we have been selected by the Orlando Business Journal as one of the best places to work. This past week, we made it once again on a list for the podcast.
Yep, absolutely. We were recognized by FeedSpot, one of the top planning podcasts. We joined the likes of Financial Planning Association and American Institute of CPAs, so we're doing well.
Yeah, good company, if you will.
Absolutely.
You got the Financial Planning Association, the Institute of CPAs, and then our program, Dollars and Cents, that's making these top podcast planning lists. So certainly good stuff, good company indeed, and certainly appreciate all of our listeners' support out there that have been listening to Dollars and Cents on such a regular basis. So we got a full week on a full show on tap, as we do each and every week. What's our first topic going to be on the program?
We'll be talking about 529s and college planning.
Very good. And you've got an interesting statistic, Chet, about how, for something that's been around a long time, a lot of people don't really understand or know what the value and benefits are of these 529s.
Yeah, it's surprising how unknown it is. I was surprised by the statistic myself. It's 50% of all adults in America don't know about 529s at all, and then of those 50%, 32% don't know what they can be used for and how flexible they are, just generally the features of them.
Yeah, certainly a valuable conversation for folks to listen in on that. And then, of course, we're going to continue a little bit with a little different flavor. Last week's conversation, we were talking about alternative investments, sort of imploding costing pensions. We're going to kind of get deeper into the category of alternative investments that's actually being sort of pushed on the individual investor as well and break that down for you. So with that, we're going to take a break and reset here on Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. My name, of course, is Joel Garris, certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary. Joining me on this week's episode, Chet Cowart, certified financial fiduciary of Nelson Financial Planning. We'll be back after these messages. So half of all American adults don't know what a 529 plan is, and nearly 1/3 that are actually saving for their children's education don't know exactly what the benefits are of a 529 college savings account. Yet, in our view, it's one of the most flexible and valuable types of accounts you can have if you're facing educational expenses. Chet, I know you and I have worked together on processing the 529s that were set up for my children many years ago, and it really is very effective vehicle for paying for those college expenses.
Absolutely. They're very powerful, very flexible, and it's shocking to me that how little people actually know about them. And how little they're actually utilized.
No, it really is, and certainly these 529 college savings accounts have been very valuable indeed. So that's what we're going to hit on this segment of the program, is an in-depth dive into 529 college savings plans. So welcome on into Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. One of Central Florida's the longest running radio programs, coming to you on a host of stations throughout the Central Florida region. Also, one of the top planning podcasts per the list just recently published by the folks at FeedSpot, joining the likes of the Financial Planning Association and the American Institute of CPAs. There is Dollars and Cents. So you're able to listen to it live here on Sunday mornings in Central Florida, or if you'd like to listen to the podcast version of the show, well, then go to your favorite podcast platform and you'll find our channel there. If you have any trouble finding us, go to our website, Nelson Financial Planning, and there you can see where you can get instantly connected over to our channel on those various platforms. While you're at our website at Nelson Financial Planning, feel free to take advantage of our free, no-cost consultation. You know, we've always offered those. We always do offer those. And so to the extent you want to get a second opinion, or maybe a first opinion on what the shape is for you and your retirement, that's how you can connect with us. My name, of course, is Joel Garris, certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary. Joining me on this week's program is a valuable member of the team at Nelson Financial Planning, also a certified financial fiduciary as well. Chet Cowart, welcome again to the program.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Very good. So, Chet, describe for our listeners what exactly these 529 college plans are all about.
Yeah, so they're a great flexible way to pay for college, as opposed to some of the defined contribution plans like the Coverdell Savings and that sort of thing. They have a lot of great benefits. You'll contribute with after-tax dollars that will grow tax-free if used for qualified expenses, and they're very flexible in terms of not only what you can use them for, but then what you can do with them after, if you know, your child decides to not go to college, or just the path that you thought they may take, they don't go down that road. It's not the account is not lost.
So, you mentioned kind of a key piece of those college savings plans. So the value is in the tax-free nature of the growth if you use it for a qualified educational expense. So that's why it's kind of important to kind of get started early with these, because the longer time you have, the more growth, the more value then that tax savings can be. And certainly from a functionality perspective, very easy to use. I think anytime I needed money for my kids' college, you just made a phone call and took care of it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of options there too. You can have them cut a check directly to the institution, or you can use it as sort of a reimbursement account if you want to go ahead and just pay for the item or the tuition yourself. You can just pay yourself back on a need-to-use basis, which is it's very nice.
Yeah, I kind of used it more as a reimbursement account, and as our listening audience knows, I just went through a personal tax return audit with the IRS, and no real questions or issues or concerns on that. So it was interesting to kind of, again, we've shared with the audience on kind of what the IRS was asking about, what they kind of asked about, but said, okay, fine, let's move forward. And certainly the distributions from the 529 college savings plans was pretty easy, pretty straightforward. So what can these accounts be used for?
Yeah, a lot of things. Of course, tuition. It can be used for books, room and board. It can be used for any sort of equipment you may need, even like laptops, things like that, as long as they're related to school. It even goes as far as it can be used for K through 12 education, even trade schools. So if you're worried about my son or daughter may not go to an in-state school or may not go to an actual 4-year university, it's still very flexible and can be used for a lot of different things.
No, and that's kind of one of the features of it, that you can use it for really all levels of education. So if you're going to private elementary school, then you can use it for that. You can use it for the laptop. I mean, it really is pretty flexible and a broad range of educational choices that you can use for these types of accounts. So, what if I get a scholarship though? What happens? What happens there? How does that work?
Right. Well, that's another great benefit of the 529s is that, first of all, it doesn't have that same sort of rule as the Coverdell where it has to be pulled out by 30. So it can sit there. You can transfer it to a sibling, a grandchild. You can move it to another person if they want to use it. Or now, as it's sort of a new rule, but it can actually be rolled into an IRA for the beneficiary.
To go into a Roth. So that's something new just for this year that's available. Sort of the asterisk on that is that the account has to have been established for at least a 15-year period of time. So again, the importance of getting started early on these kind of things. So that's cool. So can I use the money to go to Europe?
If you are studying abroad, absolutely.
Okay, but not if I'm just going to goof around.
No.
Okay,
unless you'll pay a penalty, you can pull it out.
Well, that's correct. And so if you use it for something that doesn't qualify as that qualified educational expense, and it's a pretty broad category, then okay, yes, there are some consequences to that.
Yep, absolutely. You'll pay a penalty similar to if you were to take out money from a retirement account before 59 and a half. You'll pay a slight penalty.
Well, that is true, and then taxes on the growth as well. So you kind of have that issue to deal with. Now, you mentioned a couple of other options. Those other options can be somewhat limited. The Coverdell, age 30. The prepaid plans also very limited. You think about these 529s, you can use it for a wide range of things. With the prepaid, though, you only get to use it for the sort of the sleeve that you bought.
Right, yeah, I mean, that's going to be the biggest glaring issue with the prepaid is that you're going to have to go to an in-state school, and it doesn't have all this flexibility. You can transfer it to another child, but oftentimes, as you've seen with your own kids, they want to go out of state. So. Right.
No, that is true. Despite trying to indoctrinate them early on as Florida Gators, that did not succeed. That is for sure. So certainly other options out there, but we think that the 529s really do represent probably the better option out of that.
Right. And what do you like the least about 529?
Well, that's a great question because as with any investment, nothing, it's never perfect, right? There's always some limitations, some downside. Probably the biggest sort of objection to the 529 would be that it is investment based, right? So there's no guarantee. So the value on that is going to fluctuate. Whatever you got in there is going to be a direct result of how that money did. But I think there's ways to sort of manage through that. I mean, obviously, if kids are young and they're beneficiaries of these accounts, you would position them to be more growth oriented. But then as they got closer to college, you would want to rebalance that. A lot of the times these funds have target date funds, which we're not particularly big fans of, but if you want to kind of set it and forget it, then these target date options would be the way for that to become more conservative.
Right, yeah, it seems like you'd want to position it the same way you would a retirement account as in your accumulation years, you have it be fairly aggressive, and then as you approach retirement, you want to sort of tone it back, be more conservative. So
same kind of concept. That is for sure. And certainly one of the things I like best about them is that then you're able to get that investment return over time, and certainly super easy to use. The flexibility that we've been talking about in this segment really is pretty dramatic. So bottom line, 529s, the investment for your kids' college that you need to get to know. And if you're interested, go to our website where we've got more information about those kinds of options at nelsonfinancialplanning.com. We're going to take a break and continue after these messages here on Dollars and Cents. So the alternative investment category, certainly growing popularity. We talked a little bit about this on the program last week. The average investor portfolio has about 17% now in these types of alternative investments. And there's sort of multiple issues here when we start to look at these types of alternative investments. Chief among them is that you don't really know what it is that you kind of own, right, Chet?
Yeah, I mean, we see these from time to time, especially when clients come in with statements from other firms. We'll run it through Morningstar to do an analysis, and it's hard sometimes to see what's going on in there truly on the bottom level because, first of all, they're not publicly traded, they're not on any exchange, and they don't even pop up on Morningstar at all. So we don't really know what's going on in there, and they're illiquid. That's a big problem, and they're growing too, and growing in popularity.
Sure, it really is, and that's so funny about the growth in popularity because these things were popular 30, 35 years ago. I know our firm back then even sold a number of them, particularly on the real estate limited partnerships side of things, and it's just unbelievable to kind of see all of this kind of come back around in today's world. Our role here, for the past 40 years, is sort of ensure that we only recommend to our clients what works, and more importantly, what we own personally. So, anytime there is some kind of a increase in attraction or movement of dollars over into any type of kind of different investment than what it has been, we always say before we're going to ever recommend anything to anybody else that we put our own money at risk. I mean, that's kind of how we've always done it. And so I actually, and obviously you're certainly aware of this, Chet. I actually did that with on a personal basis a few years back.
Yeah, that was really interesting to see, and when you came and had me do the analysis on it, it was very interesting to see not only it in practice and in person from someone that I know, but also to compare it back to the market and see performance.
What could have happened over that
Yep.
same period of time. So in this segment, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to give you a very specific story about exactly what I did with my own money and let you know how it turned out. Again, we don't recommend anything to our clients that we haven't done already with our own money. So before we make a recommendation, we're going to make sure it works using our own money. And the results of this little exercise involving alternative investments, certainly it is something that you want to stay tuned for here on Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. Central Florida's one of Central Florida's longest running radio programs, coming to you on a host of radio stations. Also a top planning podcast out there on the World Wide Web. So make sure you check us out on your favorite podcast platform. My name, of course, is Joel Garris. I'm a certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary at Nelson Financial Planning. Joining me this week is one of the good folks on the team at Nelson Financial Planning, who also happens to be a certified financial fiduciary as well, Chet Cowart. We've got a team of great folks like Chet at the firm these days that stand ready to help you improve your life with a successful and cost-effective financial plan. So in this commitment that we've always made for the 40 years, we say, hey, if there's something that we're going to recommend to our clients, we're always going to sort of see how that's going to work with our own money. Mm-hmm. So given this increase in popularity about alternative investments, back in 2017, I decided to take $50,000 and put it into one of these real estate limited partnerships just to re-familiarize myself with how it works.
Right.
And so we had done these types of products and investments, maybe 30, 35 years ago. And so in terms of the mechanics of how they work, you invest money in a limited partnership. Basically, you're pooling money with other investors, and then they use that money to go out, and if it's maybe it's a focus on commercial property, or maybe it's a focus on residential housing, or maybe it's a focus on low-income housing, and they just buy properties where the opportunities are in wherever those opportunities are. And so I guess that's one of the key pieces that immediately struck me, is that because they bought properties in different states, then you've got to ultimately you start getting tax documents that you have to file in all those different states. So my tax prep bill went up because I then had a bunch of state returns to file of states that I had never stepped foot in.
Yep, that would be the biggest frustration for me out of all of it, is just having to file in all those different states. And as I was looking through the sheet of all distributions, I mean, there was a decent chunk of states. There was like 8 or 9 different states that you had to file in, so that's not insignificant at all.
Because there was 10 or 11 property. I mean, that's how these real estate limited partnership works. Is it's a bunch of different properties. So so you had a bunch of different states, and I understand the lack of liquidity on these. I mean, that was that is sort of something that I certainly knew, going in. But at the end of the day, when it was all wrapped up in 2022, so this was like a 5-6 year proposition, which for a limited partnership, real estate investment trust kind of thing, that's actually a relatively shorter period of time. I looked at it and I was kind of surprised at the lack of performance that I actually got on this thing.
Right, especially in comparison to what they advertised. I mean, that IRR number is not a guarantee of what you're going to get back into your pocket, of course. And I know on a personal basis, I see ads on social media a lot for various of these, various different kinds of these investments. They are blowing up in popularity right now, and I've seen IRRs advertised of upwards of 15 to 20%, and to someone that doesn't know exactly what they're looking at, that sounds amazing. And it's clear, in your case, you can tell that that's not the reality of the situation.
Having done it with my own money, it is absolutely not the reality of the situation. And here's the biggest confusion, which you've just brought up. IRR does not stand for investor rate of return. You would think that would be what that stands for, investor rate of return.
They're happy to think they're happy that you think that as well.
Correct.
So that's what they want you to think.
That's what they're banking on. But what the IRR actually means is that is the internal rate of return. These are two different concepts of which I would dare say the entire alternative investment universe is built upon. Promoting the IRR but that's not the investor rate of return. That is the internal rate of return. So, for example, on this REIT that I just wound up getting out of finally closed out in 2022, the advertised IRR, and I showed you all these sheets, from kind of the investment, was 9%, which, okay, that's fine, okay. But then when I added up, and you saw the sheet of the distributions of where, when I had gotten cash from this investment, it added up to a totally different number.
Yeah, it was 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not the advertised IRR there.
Yeah, the IRR was 9. Okay, my actual money in my pocket, the $50,000, was I got back $65,000, and over a 5-year period of time, do the math, that's a 5%. That's a 5% investor rate of return.
And that 4% spread there, we know where that went.
Yeah. That's the piece that you don't really appreciate when you're doing this alternative investment universe, because they talk about, we get to participate in the profit, we get management fees, we get expenses, all of that. And in this case, I mean, that component consumed almost half of the overall rate of return for the entire thing.
Yep, I think the people that made the most money on that transaction were the portfolio managers in this case.
So beware of this alternative investment category. There is a difference. When you see IRR, that does not mean investor rate of return. That means internal. And then from the internal, that's when all those management fees get subtracted. Folks, that's why we always commit to not doing anything with your money that we haven't done with your own. Because you got to do this with your own money first in order to see how it actually works and when it doesn't work. So with that, we're going to take a break and continue here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris and Chet Cowart of Nelson Financial Planning. So one of the things that we've always done at Nelson Financial Planning, since our business started back 40 years ago in 1984, is, and Jack, my father-in-law, Jack Nelson, always used to say this much more than I kind of say it, but it's still a fundamental truth of how we help people along the way, is that we don't recommend anything that we haven't already done with our own money first. And, this show is, I guess, focused on a couple of those very things and sharing with the listening audience what our experience was in those situations.
Absolutely, yeah. This is a great example of whether we choose to recommend something or choose to recommend against something. It's always based in personal experience more than anything.
Well, and certainly, and because you feel it, if it's your own money. Right? If it's your own personal money, then you feel that impact much, much more. And so that's always been kind of one of the fundamental tenets of how we do business. That is for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the same way. It's much easier to tell someone, it's much easier to tell someone what to do with their investments than it is to actually put it in practice yourself. It's easy to make good decisions when your own money's not on the line. And in this case, it's always good to have some stake in it.
Well, and certainly when we think back, the 529 accounts that were set up for my kids, when they were very, very young, certainly worked out well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they did. It's been, and I've personally processed a lot of transactions within those accounts, and they've been so flexible, especially for all three of your kids that went out of state. It's been very good.
Yeah, fortunately, one is done, so that's good. And the other two, that was whatever the residual balance that remains, obviously going to continue on for graduate school. But the unfortunate thing is that folks don't necessarily know about these options.
Right. Yeah. Back to that stat, 50% of adults in the United States don't know about 529s at all. And then 32% of those that are actually college planning, they don't know basically what 529s are capable of in general, how flexible they are and how powerful they can be.
Well, and certainly they are, we believe, one of kind of, as with anything, right? There's never a perfect option, right? So a lot of people would say, well, it's got the investment component, so I don't really know what I'm going to have at the end of the day. And certainly that's very true. But when you look at returns over time, and I guess that's the importance of why you want to start these early, is the benefit of them is that the growth is tax-free. So
right.
In order to have the growth, then you want to have an early start.
Absolutely, and for the reasons of market volatility, starting early is absolutely going to help smooth that out. And then, of course, rolling that over into the Roth, which is the new option available, the account has to be established for 15 years, so there's just another benefit to start as early as possible.
Well, and to I think one of the things you said earlier, Chet, is just like as you get close to retirement, then you want to kind of readjust kind of that away from kind of a pure growth investment allocation. You can do the same thing inside of a 529 as well.
Oh yeah, and we've had that conversation with clients many times where maybe the child is 16, 17, and the next year or two they'll be going to college, and we'll tone it back and pull it out of some of the more aggressive funds that they've been in.
Certainly that is a good way to be thinking about those 529s. That is for sure. And so if you have kids, grandkids, make sure you take the time to really kind of learn about these types of accounts. And speaking of great ways to learn, of course, don't forget our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents. I think, Chet, didn't you work on the chapter on college savings as well?
I did, yep. We have a whole chapter on 529s that go very in-depth into them and the ways that you can use them them and all of that good stuff. So absolutely check it out.
Available on Amazon, or if you come by the office and take advantage of our free consultation, we'll also give you a copy of the book Next Gen Dollars and Cents for free as well. And then I guess our other topic, certainly about the alternative investment category. And, it's funny, we understand sort of the appeal. Everybody's always looking for alternatives. Everybody's always looking for alternatives to the traditional way of doing things. So these alternative investments, these real estate investments, they're pushed as an opportunity for you to own something better than the market.
Right, and on some level, they're cool, they're different, they're appealing. The classic model of stock investing, we've been doing it forever and for good reason. But it's always cool for when something new comes around. But that doesn't always mean that it's better. In fact, you would argue that the thing that's been working for so long, it's probably been working for a reason.
Well, that's very true. That's a good way. It's a good way to say that because, but yeah, the appeal is, don't you want to own, a part of some big building out somewhere, or those kinds of things. But it's really these high management fees that are just take the lion's share of the return that actually occurs in there.
Yeah, that's going to be the biggest problem, is going to be those management fees, and that's where you're going to see the difference between the IRR that's advertised and then the actual rate of return that you end up getting. That spread is going to all be management fees, and oftentimes that spread is not insignificant at all.
Well, and yeah, I mean, you alluded to some of these ads that are on social media and stuff, and certainly they're just ubiquitous out there. IRR does not stand for investor rate of return. It stands for internal rate of return. It's kind of like the gross number, right? Before you subtract all the expenses.
Yeah, it's the same way when a company comes out with an earnings call and they'll go over their revenue. That's going to be the IRR, and then their profit is going to be the actual rate of return, and oftentimes that's a big difference in the two numbers.
And it certainly is when it comes to these types of investments. So when I did this, wound up with a 5% return. Chet, you did the in-depth analysis on what it could have been.
Yep. Yeah, so we went in and compared the rate of return and some of the numbers in this fund that Joel was in versus if he had just invested it all on the same day in the S&P 500, and the difference was big. It was 5% actual return to you versus over 11 that would have occurred in the S&P. So that's a big difference.
Yeah, I was most disappointed when you showed me that the 50,000 could have been 95
right,
rather than the 50 turning into 65. So $30,000 difference. That's pretty significant. Yeah. So to your point, sometimes the stuff that has been working on a traditional basis, there's maybe a reason for that, which gets us, I guess, to one of the key takeaways about that part of the conversation. So important to really understand and know what you own, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So important to be careful and really understand. And I guess that's the limitation. There's no real transparency. There's no real transparency on what the fees are, and certainly what's advertised is not what you get.
Absolutely, and even when it comes down to knowing what's going on a day-to-day basis, if you think about any stock that you could think of that's publicly traded, it's very easy to get data for it. I mean, on my end, when we're talking Morningstar, I can get any number that you could ever want for that stock, and even the average person can just Google the ticker and see anything they need, versus some of these funds that are not publicly traded. It is hard to really ever know what you have other than just trusting your statement, and that's all you really have to go off of.
Well, and unfortunately, this is kind of history repeating itself. As we talked about earlier in the program, 35 years ago we did some of this stuff, limited partnerships, things like that, alternative investments, and it just didn't really work. I mean, it took 15 years in some cases to ultimately wrap this up, and it's kind of sad to see, and I guess this is what happens, is that things that were around previously, they never really go away, and they always kind of circle back around, but the performance is still lacking in these types of investments, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the market has been doing its thing for hundreds of years. It will likely continue to do so, and you never know what you're going to get with these.
That is for sure. That is for sure. So important to kind of get perspective and advice and understanding on these types of investments that are out there. Hopefully, the program generated some questions. Feel free to give us a call to ask any additional questions that you might have based on this week's content here on Dollars and Cents. Oh, we got to take a moment. Wish everybody a happy and safe 4th of July. Okay.
Absolutely.
Chet, do not play with fireworks.
Never.
Okay. I have a long blowtorch that I use for years to light mine off. So I have like a 3-foot safety or zone of safety.
Just a little hand
You're
lighter.
just going straight on it. Okay. Next week on the program, Kristen and Rob will be hosting the program, talking about taxes and Social Security. So thanks for listening to this week's program here. This has been Dollars and Cents with Joel Garrison, Chet Cowart of Nelson Financial Planning.